This is the Android Buffet Podcast, episode number 532, recorded Thursday, March 25th, 2021, in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So sorry, we are starting our live recording a few minutes late. Both Jerry and I were slightly delayed, although in a twist, Jerry showed up before I did when we were both delayed.
That's because I'm crazy like that.
Yeah, we're in the holiday season of Passover, so there's a lot of stuff going on, and etc. And for some reason, I keep humming a sea shanty, but that's just neither here nor there.
I don't even know what a sea shanty is.
You don't know what a sea shanty is?
Are those even legal?
Did you miss the whole sea shanty craze?
Clearly.
No, it's a thing that's apparently been going on, that people were doing. They were recording different tracks of classic sea shanties and then merging them together to create harmony.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in honor of that, in honor of Passover, somebody came up with the Red Sea Shanty.
Mm-hmm.
No, not even a groan on that one.
I just don't know.
But either way, just some of those songs are just so catchy that they catch in your head.
All right.
So I've relocated again. I am back in the woods with my 3D printer.
You're in the woods?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the woods. I spent the whole summer in the woods.
You're in the woods with a 3D printer?
Yeah, in a box. I haven't assembled it yet. It's sitting behind here along with all the other stuff. Hopefully, I have all I need to assemble a 3D printer, which I'll do during my time off next week. Since I have no plans to go anywhere, I figured might as well take off during the holiday season. So I'm going to sit here and maybe build a 3D printer, do some projects. There's stuff around the house here that I've been meaning to do. There's some smoke detectors that need replacing. This afternoon I changed some light bulbs. Stuff.
That reminds me. We need to talk about our upcoming schedule.
Okay, do you want to do that before we start the show?
Sure.
Well, again, we started the show, but as in before we really get down to business. So today is the 25th. Next week is the 1st. Is this the upcoming schedule in the next 2 or 3 weeks or further out?
Both.
Okay, so April 1st.
I don't know. I'm going to be on the road April 1st.
Oh, you're going on the road?
I'm going on the road.
Oh, that's business or pleasure?
Pleasure.
Oh, good.
We are driving up to New York City.
That is interesting.
Yep. I have some family up in New York, and we are going to stop and hang out in Fairfax, Virginia. So on the 1st, we're driving. We'll get to Fairfax late on the 1st. We'll stay there for the next 2 days, and on the 3rd, we're going to drive to New York City, where we will stay until the 5th or 6th. At which point, we're going to start driving back, and we're going to stop in Washington, D.C. for a few days for sightseeing.
Okay, so the 3rd is a Saturday, so you'll be coming through New York on Saturday the 3rd, and then you'll be staying there till the 5th?
5th or 6th, something like that.
I'm due back in New York on the 6th.
Oh.
So, sorry I'll miss you. I'm north of New York at the moment, but I can certainly give you after the show some advice about New York, although admittedly I may be biased. And also, I haven't looked to see what may have had hours or experiences affected during the pandemic, although I did hear, if you like the Intrepid Space Museum, that is just reopened to the public.
Well, we want to do Guggenheim, the Museum of New York History?
New York history or natural history?
I believe New York.
Okay, the Museum of the City of New York?
I believe so.
Okay. Uh,
Apparently, I have a cousin that works there and is going to get us tickets.
oh, sounds fun. I also, if it's open, I recommend the Tenement Museum. That's fun. There's also, of course, the Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island.
Yep, gonna want to do those. And
Okay.
Coney Island.
Yeah, as I said, I don't know how certain places are affected by the pandemic, but there are a lot of nice places to look, enjoy in New York. And while the weather isn't Florida-like, it's certainly been reasonably good lately. The snowy season seems to have sort of ended. In fact, I think it was in the 70s today, which is good. Anyway, we'll talk about more, but I hope you'll be inspired enough to come back many times. Hopefully, when I can come and say hello.
We'll see. New York is kind of scary.
Well, admittedly, lately the news from New York has been somewhat disturbing. You know that there has been an uptick in, let's say, criminal acts that are being reported on the news. But I think that's more a matter of the uncertain economic times than necessarily a New York specific problem. I'm sure that if I was in, let's say, Boise, I would hear similar things from there. The reason I hear so much about crime going on in New York is I'm following the New York news, and I'm sure there's crime in Jacksonville, and I'm sure there's been an uptick during the current situation where people are having, again, hard economic times, which always creates crime issues. But we'll see. But if you like it, you never know. And one of these days I will visit Jacksonville. It's on my list.
Swing by when you do.
You do know that one of the reasons I would consider Jacksonville on my itinerary would be to say hi. It might not be it might be like a wave station. I considered at one point like flying into Jacksonville, going by ground down to, let's say, Orlando, where I might do something and then going back or such. But you never know. There are plenty of places that I'd like to go to once I start going somewhere. My next exciting visit is my follow-up visit to Manhattan.
That's like 15 minutes away, right?
It depends. Are you talking about by car or by train?
By walking.
Oh, that's not convenient. That's hours. If I drive to the nearest commuter rail station, the fastest I get to Midtown Manhattan is 26 minutes. Now, when I went and drove, because I didn't want to take commuter rail during the current situation, to get to the Javits Center, where I was last week, would be, it took me about an hour by car in the middle of the day, so in rush hour. I once took the express bus because I don't like driving to Manhattan if I can help it. And that took me almost 2 hours when the UN was in session. And there was a lot of traffic. So it does vary, depending on how you're going. Either way, I'll be back there in a few weeks. And before that, I hadn't been in Manhattan in long enough that I couldn't remember the last time I'd been in Manhattan, even though it's not that far away. Anyway, changing subjects to the topics that we tend to talk about a bit on the show. Let's see. I mentioned the 3D printer, which I think is going to be a recurring segment, and I do want to, in addition to my jokes about building Ticket to Ride toys, I still want to try to build enclosures for some of the sensors that I built last year. Because while it isn't really a problem to have your a little node board, sitting on top of something exposed, it just doesn't look very nice aesthetically. And I think like a little plastic custom box would be very helpful. So that's another thing I can build. And I do have some home automation software improvements that I have to work on. I did do a few last week. I have a distinct problem in my bedroom, in my apartment, because suddenly my Tasmota flashed ESP8266 smart switch is not controlling the load. So if I press the button, it does register it in the software, but it doesn't seem to control the relay, which is really annoying. I've had to resort to the good the good old-fashioned way of cycling my light load.
Which is?
Well, it controls the ceiling fan light, so I just have to go and pull the chain. But I reprogrammed the button so that when it registers a change in the state of the light switch, even though it doesn't seem to be pulling the relay, it turns a different light in the room on that's still controllable. So it's essentially acting like just a button on the wall at the moment. And I was able to find one that's a combination dimmer and fan. So I'm going to ask you a question that you might have a thought about. I have a 2-gang box, which means I can put in 2 switches, etc.
Yes.
I'm explaining that for the benefit of people who've never heard the term 2-gang. I figured you would know it. But so if I have a combined switch that can control the fan and control the light and has dimming capability for both, fan control, variable speed, etc., then what do I put in the second slot?
A blank?
I thought of A, just putting a blank, B, putting in like one of those USB outlets and putting like a little shelf there.
That would be cool.
Yeah, the problem is what I had to do, because it's a very shallow box, is I had to put an extender so it actually sticks out of the wall. So I don't really need a shelf per se. I could just put it on the top of this little metal extender that comes out of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I put a picture there, but it's just, I hate, and this is a problem especially with older houses that have shallow boxes. If they don't have a deep box in the wall, then the newer switches that have all of the intelligence need more depth in order to put all of the chips and everything inside it.
Which is silly, because electronics they can put an entire computer in less space than some of those smart switches take up.
Yeah, well, you need the relay, you need the whole.
Relays aren't that big.
There must be something in there. I think if they could find a way to make it thinner, they would. I assume it's a money issue, but either way.
I have an SSR that is tiny compared to those. And an SSR is a solid state relay. It's a relay that controls 120 volt connection with a low voltage.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe it's a price point issue. I'm honestly not sure. No, I'm sure there must be a good reason.
I mean, I swear, I think you could put a Pi Zero. No, not a Pi Zero. A Pi Pico. And an SSR in there, and it would be way cheaper and smaller. But there has to be a reason. I just don't quite understand.
Well, there may be some things with 120 volts of electricity, but I'm not sure.
That's what the SSR is for. You just insulate.
Yeah, no, I'm saying it may just be that they couldn't get certification for anything thinner. Again, you can have uncertified electronics, but again, people are always reluctant to put things in their house that don't have like a UL or EU certification on it, because if there's a fire caused by it, homeowners insurance will question that.
Will they?
From what I've been told.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a renter, so it doesn't...
Sounds like an urban legend to me.
Well, let me ask you a question. You don't think insurance companies are looking for a reason to not pay out if they can... I'm not talking about making things up, but you don't think they're going to exploit every clause in their insurance contract?
Not the good ones.
Really? I remember when my living room flooded, which I think was during the period when we were doing this show, and they said that they wouldn't reimburse me for the damage to the floor because it was considered standing water.
Really?
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out because what happened was I'm on the ground floor. The downspout that drains into the sewer happens to be behind my living room. And because of the ice, the downspout froze over, and the water, when it started to melt, spilled over the side and spilled into my living room. Right after they refused to pay for it, we, in the building, hired someone to wire up the downspout with an electrical line to melt it. And I know I've mentioned it because I just recently made that smart by plugging it into an outdoor smart outlet so that I could turn it on when it got cold. without having to deal with it. Anyway, that aside, when it started raining in my living room because of an unfortunate toilet incident on the second floor of the same building, they were really quick to handle that one. So apparently, overflowing toilet from upstairs neighbor, quick payout. Frozen downspout, no. So I don't know. Anyway, insurance being what it is, back to the sort of problem of outlet. Then I started looking at those USB outlets for walls.
Yeah.
Well, some of them actually, the amount of amperage that you get out of the individual USB outlets is essentially cumulative. So you don't get individual amperage at each outlet. You essentially, the more stuff you plug in, they all have to share the same maximum amps, which is disappointing if you're trying to get, let's say, USB-C PD in your wall.
US who?
USB-C. You're familiar
What's
with that?
USB-C? Oh, Jesus, duh. Ah.
The thing on your phone, you have a Pixel 5. It has a USB-C, but PD is the power delivery part of it.
Yeah.
So it's the one that I don't necessarily always need the high level of power delivery that PD would supply, but if I have to screw it into the wall, I'm not afraid. Well, I am afraid of getting electrocuted because I've been severely shocked a few times over the years. But I'm not afraid of doing electrical work. I don't like doing electrical work, but I'm not afraid of it. But considering how shallow the boxes are and how sometimes trying to get everything in there has caused essentially a short circuit because something's touching something else because there's not really much room to wiggle. I don't want to do it multiple times. I would rather buy something a little more expensive, install it, and have it future-proofed for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't want to get somebody to start helping me, let's say, rip the box out and replace it with a deeper one, and then spackle, and then suddenly replacing a light switch turns into a major job, or at least multiple major jobs. So again, things happen. But again, it's exciting because this is where the most useful parts of my home automation stuff comes into play, with the light switches and the fans and the humidifiers. So essentially, my attempt to essentially regulate the environment of my apartment to some degree. I'm also thinking of putting up a wall, but that I need help with. I possess all of the skills necessary to put up a wall, but I've determined that I do not want to build a wall. I would rather find somebody who will build a wall for me, who has much more skill at it than I do. I have participated in wall building in the past. You
have participated in wall building?
Yes.
That's interesting.
I was not the primary wall builder. I assisted somebody who was constructing a sheetrock wall.
All right, cool.
I hammered in some nails. I helped them hang sheetrock, but I was not the lead on the project.
All right.
So, and that was a long time ago. So either way, I have sleeve air conditioners, and I have this problem where it's hard for it to cool the space because I have a common space between my kitchen and my living room.
Yeah.
So what I want to do in order to make it so that the living room will be colder, because generally I don't hang out in the kitchen very often, except when I'm cooking, since there's actually no table in there, I eat in the living room. Since I have a table in there, I want to narrow the opening between the two rooms so that more cold air will stay in one room over the other. I'm doing this right now with a curtain that I just hung and closed, but I want to actually make an arch.
All right.
Well, there was one guy who told me he would do it for a very low price, but then he disappeared for 3 years.
You know what they say, man? Good, fast, and cheap. You can only pick two.
Oh, he's good. When he actually shows up, he's good. And the only person who used to get him to show up was his cousin who retired I could always get his cousin to get him to do stuff for me. Of course, his cousin needed to be paid in order to get him to show up, but that's a whole other story. But since then, I found another person who shows up but just isn't as cheap. But his work isn't as good, so. I hired him to
we should ever get around to the news.
Yeah, but I enjoy occasionally talking about the home automation side of things. And, there are a lot of interesting home automation thoughts in regards to what you can do to improve your house with home automation. But anyway, I do want to talk about a few news things. AA Wireless, which was the project to put a little wireless dongle into your Android Auto to turn it into a wireless Android Auto device.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they're shipping their initial models, but for anybody who wants to order going forward, they had to change CPUs because apparently they couldn't get the less expensive one they were using. They had to go to a more expensive one, which is overkill for the project and costs about $10 more. But I sort of like this idea because one of the biggest things that annoys me is the fact that I can't use Android Auto wirelessly. But when I got my Android Auto unit, that was not a common thing. So I always have to plug it in, and then if there's a problem, I have to, while I'm trying to drive, unplug it and plug it back in. USB-C really helps with that, though. Doesn't happen that often, but still. And my car, even I didn't really want it, but it was part of the package, has a wireless charger in it. So I have a wireless charger in my car, but I have to plug in my phone for Android Auto, thus rendering the wireless charger useless.
Really?
Really what?
It's rendering it useless?
Well, I'm not going to charge it wirelessly while plugging it in. If the point of a wireless charger is to not have to plug it in.
Maybe you double charge it.
There are issues with that.
Are there?
It tends to heat up if you try to do that. No, there's just power coming from too many directions. I don't. No, I'm sure there's like a circuit in there to deal with that, but for some reason it seems to heat up the back of the phone.
All right.
Just in my observation. So, again, I considered that when they were talking about this device, I considered it, but it seemed to be more of a luxury. And I'm not against luxury. It just wasn't high on my list of things because I wasn't driving very much in the last year. Well, actually, correction, I wasn't driving my car very much. I've been driving my parents around in their car. So. Where they also have Android Auto, but they don't have a wireless thing. So, different scenario. Although I do have to say I do like the implementation of Android Auto on the Chrysler better than I do on the Hyundai, although I do like the Hyundai one. Because they...
What's the difference?
The difference is essentially this. So on the Chrysler that they have, and my brother has a similar car from this from a different line. The Chrysler implementation has a row of icons below the Android Auto display, which allows you to quickly switch to the car controls. Whereas on Android Auto for the Hyundai, you have to exit Android Auto in order to get any of the car controls.
Wow, that sucks.
Again, most of the time I don't need to exit Android Auto because I'm not using the car control version. The major reason I think that Chrysler did that is that their climate controls are controlled both by buttons on the console and by the screen. The Hyundai doesn't have, at least my version, does not have any digital climate controls. Everything is traditional button-based climate control.
Huh.
So I suppose it's a matter of that. By the way, speaking of automobiles, how is your truck? You didn't tell me.
I love my truck.
Does it have Android Auto?
It does.
Okay.
And it's nice because it's got such a big screen that what ends up happening is that you've actually got Android Auto in like a window. And then you still got your tabs across the bottom.
Yeah, so
and you've got like a third of the screen is displaying another feature. Like when I typically drive around with Google Maps up, and I'm listening to music from.
Are you taking the truck on your road trip, or are you taking a different automobile?
Yeah, I'm taking it on the road trip.
Okay, I look forward to seeing pictures of you, your truck, in like scenic areas.
All right.
Not like 50 of them, but like one picture of you smiling, smiling you truck, and
I have a
scenic
picture
background.
of me driving it in the Atlantic Ocean, or not a picture, but a video of me driving it in the Atlantic Ocean.
Why are you driving in the Atlantic Ocean?
Oh, so we went down to the beach to drive on the beach.
Oh, on the beach. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and
you'll
we
have to
drove
send
it
me a
into
picture.
the ocean to drive it.
Okay. At some point, I'm not sure I need a whole video, but a nice picture. I'm just curious to
It's like
visualize it.
15 seconds.
Okay. I am curious to visualize this, and I'm not sure if you want any of our listeners to be able to visualize your new purchase.
It's a black F-150.
Sounds very nice.
It is. It's currently in the shop.
Does it have wireless Android Auto or regular Android Auto?
Wireless.
Okay. So
And it's got a wireless charging pad.
yeah, so you have the full thing that I'm saying I want. I have a wireless charging
You get
pad.
in the car, you set your phone down, and it's charging, and you have Android running at the same time.
So if I wanted to do this, I'd have to buy one of these dongles. For, what is it now, 75? Let me just see okay. They're going through shipping. Okay, here we are, $75. So is it worth $75 to be able to put my phone on the wireless charger and not have to plug it in?
I think it's cool.
Yeah, at some point I'll do it. I decided I didn't want to do like the first wave of an Indiegogo project. Not that I'm really that scared, although I do remember that router you never got on Kickstarter.
Yep.
I'm sorry about that, by the way.
It happens.
I know. I'm still sorry about it. Although my recent crowdfunding purchase just shipped.
Really?
Yes.
What's that?
It's a airport-themed pandemic board game created by an airline employee, and the whole idea is that you have to navigate the adventure of getting through the airport, making sure you have your mask, being able to get beverages, and boarding the aircraft.
That's kind of weird.
It seemed like an interesting novelty, to be honest. I'm not sure if I'm going to enjoy it, but just the description was interesting enough that I said, okay, fine, I will buy a copy of this board game and maybe play it a couple times.
Cool.
But you know what they say, the first person to pass through the TSA line wins extra points. By the way, Daryl has said that you should make sure after your trip through the ocean that you get the salt off of the undercarriage.
Yes. It's yep. He's absolutely right. I had sand in places I didn't realize it would.
And also, I do want to thank Daryl for his continual support. He is one of the few people who signed up for our recurring donation to cover the cost of the server.
Thank you.
So I get an email every time the automatic subscription renews. And I'm sometimes afraid to remind him that I've noticed that, because if he said it and forgot it, he may want to cancel it. But either way, if he intentionally remembers that he's still paying us, thank you. Google had an issue this past week, and this affected at least two of my relatives who called me about it before the stories came out. Google updated Android Webview, and apparently whatever they did caused problems for a lot of phones where various applications that relied on Webview, including the Google app itself and Gmail, were crashing.
Yep, I had friends that went through that.
Yeah,
and they all asked me about it. But by the time they asked me about it, there was already a fix for it.
Yeah, sometimes Google is not fast about things like this, but this time, to their credit, they were. So, but again, for a few minutes, I couldn't figure it out because I fiddled with their phone for them. At least the one who was within range of me, because the other ones were nowhere near me. And couldn't figure it out, and then started looking online and saw the story about it. Oh well. But these things do occasionally happen. It just Google is one of the organizations that has such a reach that them making a mistake with one of their applications does have far-reaching impact.
Yes. Especially one used as prolifically as that.
Yeah, and there were a lot of articles. What is web for people who didn't quite understand the problem? Like, what is Webview and why did it do this? And they're worth reading. Sort of explaining how instead of you opening up a view into the web and essentially having a browser built into your software, a lot of people call out to this application, and it's used to be sort of built into the operating system, but so that it could be updated, Google put it into the Play Store. So pretty much every phone has it installed by default as a system app and then updated.
Well, imagine if they had updated it with the bug and a system.
Yeah, that would have. But that's the advantage.
Way worse than.
Since we started this program, if you remember, it used to be that the only way you got updates to bundled apps was with an update to the entire OS. Google realized that that wasn't going to work because people do not expect. They understand that the operating system may not be updated very often, but they don't expect that a bunch of apps can't be updated without updating the whole phone. Also, Daryl has commented that no, he does still remember that he is giving us a donation. So that is double thank you to Daryl.
Thank you, Daryl.
Yep. Chrome on desktop got live captioning.
This is so weird.
Well, I like the idea of live captioning. I mentioned that since Zoom is going to be giving out live captioning as well, I'm not going to apply for the early beta. But once it's normal, maybe I will, since we're using Zoom to record the podcast, maybe I will try to get a transcript. Although in my experience, some of those transcripts are a little embarrassing, depending on... Google got a lot better. You know, they use things like Google Voice to train their algorithms, and they're doing a lot better on it. But still, I don't know what the quality is on the Zoom transcription. If you follow Android Central, which is one of the many sites that I paw through for stories for the podcast every week, they had a one that I thought was a pretty good topic, which is what messaging apps do their people use. So they had people who use Facebook Messenger, Google Messages, Slack, WhatsApp, and they did go over it. Telegram, Google Hangouts, which they won't be able to use for much longer, Google Messages, which is the SMS app, Facebook Messenger, Snapchat. So again, it was sort of this interesting analysis of why people are using different messaging apps, and I thought that was worth considering. What is your messaging app of choice right now, Jerry? If you talk to
people. It depends on who I'm talking to. I use SMS. For SMS, I use a thing called SMS Organizer. For work, I use Slack. For family, I use WhatsApp. For a lot of communities, I use Discord. I mean, I use what's ever appropriate. I'm not...
And the same with me. The only thing that annoys me is that means I have to have 10 apps installed. But what I tried to do, and I know I mentioned it a while ago, was I was using Bitleby. Mm-hmm. Now, the advantage of Bitleby is it just converts everything into IRC. That's also a disadvantage because IRC has its limitations. And there are other services that will do the same thing, try to bridge all of these different networks into one interface. Because personally, I don't care what people are on. I'll go wherever they are if they're the ones I want to talk to. But I just hate having to go through 5 different apps.
I understand.
So the most recent one that I added to my system, and it is available in my unified messaging app, is Telegram. But that's because I use Telegram to get messages from Home Assistant. It has the best integration into Home Assistant of any of the simple ones that I looked for. And the reason I needed that is the Home Assistant app will only allow you to send messages from one Home Assistant instance. And I have more than one running, so I needed something that could send to multiple ones. So each house shows up as a user in Telegram using their bot system.
Okay.
Either way, I'm agnostic. If people want to find me somewhere, they can talk me into installing another messaging app. or trying to bridge it to my system. Google introduced the Wi-Fi NANScan, and I keep mispronouncing this. So it's
NANScan.
Yeah. So what this is this neighbor awareness networking (NAN), which allows Android 8 and above devices to discover and connect directly to each other without any type of connectivity. So these APIs discover nearby devices and create network connections to share data or send short messages.
Sounds kind of creepy to me.
So what they did was this Wi-Fi NANScan app demonstrates how you can use NAN to get the distance between two devices.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is a complement to their Wi-Fi RTT scan app, which uses the round trip time indicator for indoor positioning as an alternative to GPS. So these are apps to do proof of concept on technologies that are integrated into some phones that might be used more in the future. Never a bad thing. I like a little experimental app to say, this is the technology we're working on. Try it out. It's cool. And eventually we'll integrate it into something else and make it useful.
Cool.
Fire TV has brought customizable local news to more cities. So if you have a Fire TV, you can now watch local news.
Awesome. We need more news. We need more local news.
Well, that's sort of the thing. I do the same thing with Roku, which has a lot of local news feeds coming into it. And I like the idea of being able to watch the news. Admittedly, I have differing opinions of which network news is well done and which isn't, but everybody does.
Yeah.
So some of them I can't get everywhere. One of the things I like about radio is nowadays you can get pretty much every radio station streaming from anywhere in the world, but most television is geo-locked. So if I was in Bulgaria, and I'm using that because I was for a bit, I couldn't watch the news in New York very easily. Just as an example, because a lot of those things are region locked.
Mm-hmm.
But I could stream the local news radio station over the internet. So different technologies, different integrations. On a happy note, tomorrow, March 26th, in Boston, is Leonard Nimoy Day.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm a fan. I met him once. By the way, that's meeting as in I said, hello, I'm a big fan of yours, and that was pretty much the conversation. So not I had a long, drawn-out dinner conversation with him, so I'm not. That would have been interesting if I certainly would have had some questions. But no, you know how it is. You see a famous person, I'm a fan of yours, you try not to bother them too much because they're human beings trying to go about their lives. But anyway, Leonard Nimoy is from, or was from, the Boston area, Dorchester, if I remember correctly. And the city has decided to honor him with a day.
Wow. I like it.
I like it too. I thought I would mention it. I don't know how I came across that, but you know how it is. You get interesting things in your feed. The Amazon Echo gets open source brain transplant. And this is from Hackaday. So it is an article from a few days ago where someone essentially replaced the firmware on their original first generation Echo, which is Linux powered.
Yeah.
So what he did was remove everything that called back to the Amazon servers and replaced it with compatible free software libraries.
Neato.
So he got the microphone array working, but not the onboard digital signal processor. And because that really showed how the hardware was, he had to use a computer to do the digital signal processing and just use the device, etc. So in his version, the Echo performs wake word detection locally, but offloads the actual speech processing to a more powerful computer in his house.
That's cool.
See, I would do this because I do have an old original Echo. But again, sounds like a fun little project. And finally, the FCC wants to hear from Americans who have been ignored by the broadband industry.
Really?
Yes, so this is from Ars Technica, John Brodkin, whose work we've cited before. Apparently, they want people to tell them their problems with ISPs because they are trying to get a better sense of things.
Careful what you wish for.
Well, you remember the story that we were talking about a few weeks ago where somebody took out an ad in the newspaper in order to get the attention of their service provider?
And it worked.
Yeah, so the FCC cannot dictate that service providers do anything. But this is something where they're saying, well, we're going to really just shine a light on it. And the reason that they're doing that you may or may not agree with, is that the government does have discretionary funds for broadband as part of various programs. So this may determine where it isn't viable for a business to come in, but the government may be able to assist. You know, if you go back to the 30s, the rural electrification projects, I don't know why I stumbled on that word, where the government realized that these companies would not bring electricity to these small communities and essentially subsidized that process and ultimately got out of it. But they made sure that it was economically viable for these companies to go in so that there could be universal electricity. And I think now the government is slowly realizing that they might have to do the same thing for broadband. And I know from my experience in talking to you that you are against governments getting involved in this sort of thing. But I could be surprised.
No, don't be surprised.
So you don't like the government getting involved in this?
As a general rule, no.
Okay. No, I'm saying I know you well enough. I like the idea that the government tries to help people, as opposed to what the government often tries to do, which is not help people. However, like you, I am skeptical of the government's ability to successfully help, do anything. So, to put it in 2 words that you can understand, it's complicated.
Is it though?
No, I'm saying my opinion on it is complicated.
Oh, all right.
It is not a this or that opinion. By the way, Daryl uses Facebook Messenger because in the Philippines, where he has family, Facebook is free data if they use the local telecom company, Globe Telecom. So that's 0 rating, which isn't really done in the United States very much, but it is done in many parts of the world, where the only thing you can get is Facebook, without paying more money. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the show notes. Next week on the 1st, we didn't settle that, did we? So there will be no show on the 1st, or you want to reschedule it for an alternative day?
Can we do it on the 31st?
I am available. The only thing is on the 31st, we would have to do it somewhat earlier in the evening because I have my standing evening social event.
That is acceptable.
Okay, that usually that starts at 9. And usually people start to drift out at 11. Last night I drifted out. They kept talking. I drifted out at midnight, and I'm told that they kept going till 3 a.m.
Yeah. So would you like to do it at
I
8?
would say doing it at 8 is probably better because I'm the one who starts the Zoom on that.
All right.
I drove up here yesterday. The meeting was at 9. I came through the door here at 8:46, ran down to the basement where I'd left my laptop, turned the laptop on, started the Zoom, and ran back to unload the car in the rain. So they started talking while I was bringing in boxes of stuff.
All right.
So they rely on me. Not that there isn't anybody else in the community who could do it, but they know that I'm likely to just remember to turn the thing on for them. Anyway, that said, I will be happy to do it at 8 next week on Wednesday.
Cool. And then maybe on the 8th may work.
Yeah, the 8th, I know that I will be free after my appointment that afternoon. So you tell me if you want to change it. I'm available.
I don't know yet.
Yeah.
We're still making reservations, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Does
when we're going
separate from the show, if there's anything that you need in terms of advice, I'm very familiar with both the Virginia and the New York area.
to. Yes.
I have family in Virginia, and I have family all over New York. So if there's anything I can do to give you advice, admittedly, I'm not an expert, but I certainly know a lot of things. Although the last hotel that I used to stay at in the Virginia area just got knocked down and turned into an Amazon fulfillment center.
Well, we are going to Airbnb in Fairfax, Virginia, and we're going to Airbnb in New York. We're going to get a hotel in Washington, D.C.
And I'm old school about that, and I'm always curious. Airbnb makes me uncomfortable.
Really? Yeah, okay.
Well, no, there are two reasons. Admittedly, I could deal with the you're staying in somebody else's home idea. Because effectively a hotel is like you're renting a home from somebody. It's just nobody lives there permanently. But I'll give you a different example. I mentioned that Passover is this weekend through next week, and that's why I decided to take time off right now.
Yeah.
So a lot of people like to go away for Passover because there's a lot of preparation that involves cleaning your house, and a lot of people find it easier to rent a property or go to a hotel that set up a special Passover program so that they don't have to do all that work. With me so far?
Yes.
Okay, so this year a lot of people didn't go to hotels for programs because a lot of those programs, because of the pandemic, got canceled. And a lot of people last year were forced to stay at home. This year, they started planning very early, and a lot of people rented places and arranged, to bring food there, etc. So one of the most popular destinations for doing this has been renting houses in the Orlando area. And I've been seeing these stories where people rented houses or through Airbnb, through Vrbo. You familiar with Vrbo? It's a similar type site.
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, I forget what it stands for. It doesn't bother me. Vrbo. It's Vrbo, is how it's pronounced. It's an American vacation rental online marketplace, originally known as Vacation Rentals by Owner. It's currently owned by, it was acquired by HomeAway, and it's now owned by Expedia. So it's sort of, let's say it's an Airbnb competitor that's mostly for vacation homes. Things like cabins, beach houses, etc. So people rented on these sites, and the owners of these properties, after they, within the last week, have been canceling their reservations and then renting it to other people at tremendous markups. Which, by the way...
that's not nice.
Yeah, but a hotel actually there's some legal protections against a hotel doing that. Under most states' law, if a hotel cannot provide you a room, they're required to arrange for an equivalent room at another facility. You may argue whether or not it's equivalent, but they're legally required to guarantee you that rate somewhere else and to pay any difference. With Airbnb and Vrbo, there's no such requirement. So occasionally with some of these sites, they cancel for whatever reason, and suddenly you're up the creek. And these people, because of these preparations, they've shipped containers full of food for a week's worth of preparations to these places. So they essentially have a trailer full of food and nowhere to go with it. So again, the reason why I feel...
How often does that happen?
I hear a lot of Airbnb and Vrbo stories, but I hear a lot of hotel horror stories also. The difference being that I feel like there's not and I know you don't like regulation, but there's not enough requirement that these organizations deal with you in good faith, and I just hear too many stories, and I don't feel Airbnb as a company or even Vrbo is doing enough to prevent this from happening.
Well, you understand that if companies act evil, people stop doing business with them. There is an economic incentive to deal with their customers on a good faith basis.
I agree with you.
Now, there are times when a company simply cannot fulfill its obligations. And because the customer typically deals with a particular deals with a particular company only once or twice or three times, but very rarely, relatively, then That is what the customer sees this as. The company is screwing me.
No, it's
It
not the
doesn't
company,
do the company any good to screw them.
but it isn't the company. That I'm not blaming Airbnb. I think they should do more. So I probably am blaming them a little. But remember, Airbnb and VRBO, these are based on them acting as a middleman to private individuals.
Yeah, and if the owner of that property acts shady, then they will get shady ratings, and it will become increasingly difficult to actually rent their property, or Airbnb will kick them off.
And I feel more that it's less likely for me to end up in a city without any place to stay if I use a hotel.
Okay.
So again, that's the basic reason. Also, there's a few other things that I don't like, but for me, I would rather be in a place with that was more home-like anyway.
Yeah,
But
my wife likes to cook. Well,
yeah,
she doesn't like to cook, but she does cook very well, and cooking is significantly cheaper.
well, for
So,
me, it depends. If I'm staying for a place for more than if I'm staying in a night, I'm not going to spend enough time. But if I'm staying for a few nights, then yes, I'd like to be able to bring food in, put it in a little refrigerator. So even in hotel rooms, I often get one with a little micro fridge where I can just warm something up. I have gotten ones where there's cooking implements and I've used them, and as you know, I did that the last time I was away for more than a week. I tried to get a place that would let me do that, but either way, it's while I'd like it, as I said, I just feel uncomfortable. I may change that at some point. I may someday say I'm going to take the risk, try one of these places, and say, okay, it was fine. I feel more comfortable with it. I just am not there yet. Also, because a lot of times my plans are not confirmed, you can actually cancel a hotel much more effectively than an Airbnb.
okay.
Anyway, I may change my point of view on that. I don't know if I ever will, but I'm old-fashioned on some things, and that's fine.
And that's okay.
I'm willing to accept it.
I just think that believing a company is out to screw you
Oh, I don't.
is.
I don't believe that.
Have you ever heard the phrase, you can shear a sheep many times, but you can skin it only once?
No, but I get the meaning of it. I didn't say that I think Airbnb and VRBO are out to screw me. I think that the private individuals on their network are. Just think that a lot of these companies, when they do this sort of, the same problem you have with other things where they're a platform, that the platform doesn't necessarily enforce these things very effectively. And it's not because they don't necessarily want to, but because they're not willing to accept that level of liability. They claim that there's a guarantee that they're going to work with you, but there's a limit to how far they're going to go. Whereas hotels, while I've certainly had very bad experiences at hotels, have a legal requirement to put me somewhere.
I don't know, man. The Airbnb place, since my daughter has taken over the dealing with arrangements for sleeping arrangements, I have found that Airbnb host will more often than not bend over backwards to keep you happy. Now, sometimes there's just shit they can't do, but you know, it's the same as everything else. If you're straight with, and if you treat people fairly, then they tend to treat you fairly.
And again, I just worry, and like you've been involved in real estate.
Yep.
I have been involved in real estate from a different perspective. I don't own any real estate, but I've done a lot with taking care of relatives' properties. I've been on the side of dealing with tenants and some of the crazy things they do. So I work.
Yes, and landlords have horror stories about tenants. Tenants have horror stories about landlords, and they're probably both true. But
Yeah.
the vast majority of tenant-landlord relationships are amicable and mutually beneficial.
No,
They
I agree
have
with
to
that
be.
point. No, I agree with that point. But anyway, just going to the point of both sides have problems I worry about. I worry about being the tenant, and I worry about being the super, or the person representing the landlord. And I've been both. So and I've had problems on both levels. So, it's just I don't want to deal with the hassle sometimes. Sometimes you're willing to pay more money to feel like you're not going to end up being hassled. On that note, that's a good time for us to end for the evening. Shall we adjourn until next week on the 31st? One day early for those of you who are paying attention.
I hate how often I talk and talk and talk, and then you don't hear any of it because I'm muted, because I'm trying to be nice and not fill our listeners' ears with noise that they don't need to hear.
So what words of wisdom did I miss?
I don't know. I forget.
Okay. So,
but basically, yeah, have a good night.
Okay, we will again Wednesday at 8 p.m.
Wednesday. That's what it was. Oh, I know what I said. I said you're going to have one less day to find news.
Which is sad, but I could always tell you how the 3D printer thing works out.
I'm looking forward to it. And you know what? Since I'm coming up soon, I may just drop these prints off at your house.
But you're not likely to be on Long Island if you're going to New York.
We're staying in Queens.
Okay, it's possible. I won't be there, but there's certainly a mailbox. That would be extra disappointing if you came, and remember, the address I gave you is actually not where I live. It's in the same neighborhood, but it would be disappointing if you were in my neighborhood and I didn't come and see you.
I know.
So you may tempt me to try to come back a day early. The only reason I'm not
tempt you.
Yeah, the holiday ends on Monday, and I just figured I needed a day to clean up before driving back. But you never know. If you tell me you're going to be there, I might be tempted to come and just see you for a few minutes.
All right. We'll see.
Anyway, enjoy your week and have a nice trip. Enjoy Virginia. I was just there 2 weeks ago in Lorton.
I don't know where that is.
That's where the auto train stops.
Oh, yes.
That's not that far from D.C. I got bagels there.
Ooh, bagels. Yeah.
I got them delivered to the train. So when I arrived and got in the car, someone showed up with bagels.
Cool.
Before you're really impressed, I called my uncle who lives in the D.C. area, and he brought bagels and other refreshments for us. So no, I did not actually just order them directly.
Bagels are good.
Yeah, it was a nice treat. I haven't had a fresh bagel in ages.
Oh, no.
It's a carbs thing.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with my unwillingness to go get a bagel. It's just, I've been eating bagel thins, so those are not quite so fresh. Anyway, starting today, even though I'm 2 days early for Passover, I will not be eating any bread until probably the Tuesday that you're going to be in New York.
That means we can have pizza. My daughter she loves thin crust pizza, so she's really looking forward to some actual New York pizza.
I can give you some recommendations, although that is like a fighting word in New York.
What, pizza? Do I have to call it a pie?
No, what's good? What is good pizza is like everybody has their own opinion.
Oh. Okay. She's not a complicated person. Lots of cheese, lots of pepperoni, and cheese.
Yeah, when one political figure ate his pizza in New York with a knife and fork, it was a scandal. New Yorkers are very serious about their pizza.
Pizza pie.
Yeah.
Is it okay to call it a pie?
Yeah, we don't. Nomenclature is not the issue.
Oh.
It's like which place you should go to.
Do you put like corn on your pie?
I hope not.
Italians put corn on their pie.
They can.
Italians put all kinds. And when I say Italians, I mean Italians in Italy. They have some really strange pies.
Yeah, a lot of places have interesting combinations. But either way, I could probably give you a few recommendations, and you could look online. There's a lot of opinions about who makes the best pies in New York.
I would love some recommendations, but I'd need them written down because I'm not likely to remember them.
I'm
So
saying
whenever
I
you're
would.
thinking about it, send me a message with the name
Yeah,
of a place. And,
I have to go look up because remember, I haven't been going around much. I have to make sure with the restaurant turmoil lately that there hasn't been some like ownership changes.
right. Okay.
But I'll see what I can do.
That would be awesome.
I don't want to think about it too much because I won't be eating pizza for the next week and a half unless it's made on a piece of matzah. So, which by the way is not pizza. It is a poor man's alternative.
Okay.
Everyone have a nice week.
Bye, folks, and thanks for listening to us just ramble. Because
We should have like put a divider there and just said, if you want to stop listening now, we're going to talk about random New Yorky things.
this will be my first time to actually hang out in New York.
You'll
I've
like
driven
it.
through before, but I don't know, man. I'm kind of scared of having that big old truck there and parking it.
Yeah, there's some neighborhoods, especially now with again economic issues, but New York overall is not an unsafe place. Again, there's been an uptick lately, but that's not inherently a problem.
All right. Cool.
Everybody have a nice week.
Bye, folks.
Goodbye.